got you in the middle of the intro, though, dude.
Hey everybody, I'm Mike with Budget Guns and Gear Reviews, and this is The Right of the People, where we use the first to defend the second every Friday night at 7 p.m. Eastern. So uncover your keyboards and fire up your fingers. It's time to join the conversation.
Hey everybody, I'm Mike. This is MK Outdoor Journal, but this is still The Right of the People, where we do in fact use the first to defend the second. As you can see, we are already having a little bit of technical diddlies, but nothing we can't overcome. So yeah, welcome to everybody here, even the hater who came in early and gave me a thumbs down. Engagement's engagement, so up or down, it's still a thumb. So thank you, sir or madam, for your vicious hatred. It soothes my soul and cleanses my spirit. Speaking of soothes my soul and cleanses my spirit, our guest here on the panel doesn't do either of those things. We have the irascible, yet lovable, and harassable Squibload. How are you, sir? If we can hear you now.
Well, I am maybe a little less frustrated. So for over a week now, I have had all kinds of issues with mobile connections. StreamYard doesn't work at all, it seems like. It's just not cell phone friendly. And when you're driving around, it definitely doesn't work. The chamber has given me some issues, but not as many. It's a lesser of two evils. So if you heard any frustration in my voice there out in the audience, that's because I've been dealing with this all. I've been having drop connections, or I can see them, but they can't hear me, or no internet connection. When it's been really irritating. So I'm glad you're using the chamber today. And yeah, when the intro is playing on your end, audience, you guys can hear that, but the panelists on this end, we can't hear it. So in the pre-show, or right before he goes live, he'll tell us he's going live, and then we all get quiet. So just to give the audience an idea of what it's like to be on the other side of the screen, I didn't even look at the clock when I came back on, and that's why I was stepping all over your intro there, Mike.
That's okay. You just, broke the F barrier already. That's all right.
Oh, yeah. You can hear that frustration right off the get-go. Like I said, over a week of this. We can't hear you. We can see you. We can't hear you.
Brother, before I went live, when you were trying to get on, I could see it. I could see that frustration, that big giant sigh of, not again. Oh, yeah. This is some bullshit.
The life of a YouTuber, right?
Mm-hmm.
We suffer for our craft.
Yes.
Thanks, everybody, for joining us tonight.
Yes, we do. Apparently, though, YouTubers aren't the only ones that suffer for their craft. Unfortunately, there was an incident on a movie set. I'm sure you guys have heard about this, where Alec Baldwin was handed a quote-unquote prop firearm, and I would submit that it's not a prop because it fired a live round. But he was told that the firearm was cold, didn't have any live rounds in it, and he proceeded to shoot it, struck the camera person, penetrated fully through the camera person, killed her, and struck the director. At least that's as I understand it. The camera person died, and I definitely want to extend my condolences to her family. That has to be a really tough burden to bear. And despite the fact that he is an anti-gun loon, left-wing moonbat nutbag, my heart also goes out to Alec Baldwin, because I don't wish having to bear this burden on anyone, even him. My first reaction to this was, ha, ha, and then I realized that was kind of a dick move. I posted something pretty snarky on Instagram because he had made a post on Twitter a while back. I think it was back in 2017. about, gee, I wonder what it's like to kill someone wrongfully. And, I was like, well, guess you know. I felt bad about that because after I thought about it, I realized that trying to use this to score points makes me just as bad as the anti-gunners who use the atrocities like Parkland, like, Sandy Hook, and other atrocities to score political points. It's the same. It is the other side of that coin. And I'm not going to spend that money. I've decided that I'm not going to try to score points with it. But what I am going to do is ask questions. And I think that the most important question we can ask is, who's responsible for this incident and how do we prevent it? But before we get into asking that question, I want to say hello to the people out there in the chat. Let's see, who do we have? We got Defense Dad was first up. Aside from the hater who came in and gave me a thumbs down, for which, again, I thank you. Gizzard Gary's out there. Rich White, Gun Loving Grandpa. Defense Dad's still in there. James Pellerin's in the house. And so far, that's the only people who've said something in the chat. If you're out there and you haven't spoken up and sounded off in the chat, please feel free to do so at any time. All I ask is that even if you disagree with me, because disagreements are welcome here, just be polite about it. Don't be a jerk. Don't be someone who makes personal attacks, puts out racist, any other garbage. Confine yourself to the matter at hand and don't start cussing and fussing and basically being a dick. As I said, it's okay to disagree. I welcome disagreement. That's how I test my ideas against someone else's and see if I need to maybe change whatever it is that I think. But you're not going to get that response if you're just being a jerk. If my mods don't ban you, I will. So, yeah. RB out there. Hello, RB. How are you? Glad to see you. I don't think I've ever seen that name out there, so welcome to the show. Born to be a shooter, Josh. Welcome to you, sir, as well. I appreciate you coming and hanging out. If you want to hang out for the whole ride tonight, should be about an hour and a half, maybe 2. Feel free. If not, hey, thanks for being here for even a part of it. Small Caliber Arms Review. How are you, sir? All right, let's go ahead and get into this. This is a piece from the New York Post. It says, Alec Baldwin ignored the #1 rule of gun safety, Hollywood weapons expert. By Carrie J. Byrne, Connor Skelding, Dean Balsamini, and Dana Kennedy. How many people does it take to write an article in the New York Post? Damn. From October 23rd, 2021. Alec Baldwin, who accidentally killed his cinematographer on the set of his film Rust, should have never pointed a gun at another human, even if he believed it was safe, Hollywood safety experts told the Post. And the actor is now likely to face a gauntlet of legal challenges, including possible criminal charges, as both the man who pulled the trigger and as the executive producer responsible for set safety, legal experts said. Loaded or unloaded, a weapon never gets pointed at another human being, Hollywood firearms consultant Brian Carpenter of Dark 30 Film Services told the Post. Baldwin, 63, fired a prop gun that killed Helena Hutchins, 42, and injured the film's director, Joel Souza, on the Rust set in Santa Fe, New Mexico on Thursday. For safety, all live firearms used in TV and film productions are typically aimed at a dummy point, not at equipment, cast, or crew, Carpenter noted. Guns, he said, are never aimed at a person. You never let the muzzle of a weapon cover something that you don't intend to destroy, said Carpenter, whose New Orleans-based firm has worked on the sets of scores of TV and film productions. All guns are always loaded. Even if they're not, treat them as if they are. Former filmmaker and former U.S. National Shooting Team member Peter Lake put the blame on Baldwin. "The buck stops with Alec Baldwin on every level," he told the Post. "It looks very bad for him. At least the captain of the Titanic had the good sense to go down with the ship." Baldwin was told it was safe to use the prop gun minutes before he fired the round that fatally struck Hutchins, a warrant application from the Santa Fe County Sheriff's Office says. At the time, Hutchins was behind a camera operator's monitor, looking over the operator's shoulders. A source close to the crew told the Los Angeles Times, and Souza was behind them. The crew had yet to retreat to the video village, an area set up for crew to watch from a distance, the paper reported. Assistant Director Dave Halls didn't know the firearm had a live round in it, announcing it was a cold gun when he gave it to Baldwin, the court papers say. Still, Baldwin may face serious legal trouble, possibly including negligent manslaughter, Joseph Costa, an attorney with Costa Law in Los Angeles, told the Post. "As an executive producer, you're in a position of control and you can get prosecuted criminally," he said. "It's the equivalent of drinking and driving, meaning someone may not have intended to cause great harm, but they do." New Mexico criminal attorney Erlinda Johnson, a former state and federal prosecutor, said the actor faces possible criminal liability for involuntary manslaughter. "All the state needs to demonstrate is that he was engaged in a lawful but dangerous act and did not act with due caution," she said. "That's what the state has to prove for involuntary manslaughter, which is a fourth-degree felony with a maximum penalty of up to 18 months in prison." She speculated that Baldwin may argue that someone handed him the gun, but then, well, it was incumbent upon him, since he was handling the gun, to make sure there were no rounds. "Clearly someone didn't do their due diligence," she said. "They should have been checking those guns to make sure there were no live rounds." LA defense attorney Denise Bowden predicted that anyone running that set will be sued. Yes, Alec Baldwin was the main producer, but it might be found out that another producer did more to cut corners. "I don't think there will be anything as bad as a murder charge, but this is going to be a legal nightmare for Baldwin," she said. The production was reportedly troubled over its firearms and general safety on the set. The prop gun had misfired twice on October 16th and once the week before, according to the LA Times, and union workers said the set was plagued by safety issues, prompting them to walk out in the hours ahead of Thursday's tragic shooting. Experts also claimed that live ammo should have never been on the set to begin with. "I can't think of any reason there would be a live round anywhere on set," Lake said. "They're generally prohibited for movie sets. There's no explanation I can think of why there would be a live round and a gun on set. You certainly wouldn't have it in the hands of an actor." So, that's what the New York Post has to say about this. As I said earlier, well, before I reiterate my bloviation on it, do you have any thoughts on the matter, Squib?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, I had a conversation with Defense Dad and Travis P11 about this last night, and Defense Dad brought up a good point. I was handed a firearm that had a magazine in it, and I didn't think the magazine was loaded because sometimes I store some of my guns with a mag in the mag well, or there are some guns that if you want to lock the bolt to the rear, you have to have a magazine in it. So I went to open the action to see if it was loaded, and I was stopped before I could pull the charging handle all the way back. Whoa! It's a loaded mag. I almost chambered a live round. Now, I'm not inexperienced with firearms. I probably should have removed the mag before I did it, and I guess I wasn't thinking because, like I said, some of the firearms I store with an empty mag in them, and that is a good example of how somebody who even knows what they're doing can, from time to time, screw something up. There's some people out there that swear they've never had a negligent discharge, but I don't know that I necessarily believe them. The thing is, firearm safety is really important, and it's something that is easily overlooked And depending on the situation with these actors, they might just be used to being handed a prop gun, and it might not be a standard operating procedure for them to check. But I was saying that if we were going to do a scene together, I'm going to show you every round in my gun is a blank, and I want to see every round in your gun. I don't care what the armorer said, I don't care what the director said, or a prop master or anything else. We're about to do a scene here where we're using blanks. Really, you should take it a step further and take a wooden dowel and run it down the barrel, because that's how Brandon Lee got killed. He got killed by a squib load. And what had happened is somebody had fired that revolver with live ammunition offset, like at a target range or something, and it had a squib, and there was a bullet jammed down the barrel. They didn't know it. It was the last round they fired, and they had so when they loaded it up with blanks later on the set, the pressure from the gas from the blank sent that bullet down the barrel the rest of the way and into Brandon Lee and killed him. So maybe Hollywood's going to have to come up with a standard operating procedure and checks and double checks and some of the things that might seem redundant or ridiculous, but there's a lesson to be learned out of this. Something else I want to bring up is that I was watching a video where some reenactors were showing how they use blanks and revolvers to reenact a gunfight out in the street, right? Like an Old West type scene. And one of them was saying that it looks from the audience's point of view that they're pointing guns at each other, but they're actually pointing them offset. And even though the blanks have been tested to make sure that at a certain distance they're not dangerous, I want to say it's like 15 feet or something like that, they still don't point them directly at each other, but the audience can't tell that. So when that prop master there, that armorer was being quoted in the article, I'm wondering if Hollywood does the same thing as the reenactors do that are out in the open doing live shows.
From what I understand.
Yeah, so those are just some things I wanted to point out. I'm not saying Alec Baldwin is a victim here too, but I'm also not saying that he did this maliciously. He's got to live with this for the rest of his life.
I'm absolutely certain it wasn't malicious.
But was this complacent? And was it complacent in the same sense that I almost chambered a live round in somebody else's gun, right? Was it complacent like that? Like, I've done this, 100 times. He did tweet or something before they did the shoot. I mean, the filming, that they've been working long hours. Was he exhausted? Was the whole crew exhausted? Another thing is, this is perfect timing for all these strikes that are happening in Hollywood. They hired some half-ass armorer to go in there, and maybe that's how a live round ended up on the set. They didn't get somebody who was really experienced and trained and stuff, because right now they're having problems with their labor right now because all these strikes. So I don't think somebody purposely put that in there to you could go down a conspiracy theory rabbit hole and say somebody put a live round in there to sabotage it, thinking nobody would get shot, but that's just too big of a risk to take. What I think they need to really do is backtrack and figure out how live ammunition got on the set. Was everything else in the gun a blank? We need more details to really figure out what's going on here, but it's a really screwed up situation. And I can see Alec Baldwin or some of these other Hollywood types proposing we need more gun control because of their screw-up, instead of saying, how do we stop this from ever happening in Hollywood again? How do we improve our safety? How do we learn from a tragedy or an atrocity, how to make this less likely? Because that's what safety exists for in this world. People died, people got hurt, things happened, and things, had to change. That's why we have wider stairwells, right? Because of 9/11, right? It's the same principle. Will Hollywood learn from this, or will Hollywood use this as an excuse to just push gun control? It'd be interesting to watch and see.
It looks like we've been joined by Roll Call 219. I think that's the mustache I saw there. Are you out there, Ro? If you're out there, Ro, I can't hear you, buddy.
Yeah, I'm driving, so I had to mute, and it's pouring rain. I'm coming home from work.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Sorry.
No, it's all right. We're talking about the Alec Baldwin shooting on the movie set. and asking the question.
Oh, that scumbag? Yeah.
Asking the question, who's responsible?
Oh, I mean, everybody that said is responsible. I mean, more or less, the armor is probably responsible for it. It's just as much. But I mean, where are we going to place the blame at? I think we can place the blame on Alec Baldwin for pulling guns at somebody that and then I mean, you're
Robots got you.
certified. Am I all right? I'm going through.
Now,
I might be going
now
through
you
a dead
are.
zone.
Now you are. You were. The robots had you there for a minute.
Yeah, I mean, as the anti-gunners don't know, we've all take training classes. We've done the safety checks. We've taken the courses. We've watched the videos, and I'm sure these guys have. But at what point? At what point are these people going to understand that pointing guns at people is not right? I don't care if it's it doesn't matter. That's unethical in gun handling to do that. And to that or whatever he
Can't understand a word you're saying, Ro. I think the gist is that Hollywood folks need to learn that it doesn't matter. You don't point a gun at anybody, regardless of whether it's a prop gun, supposed to have blanks in it, et cetera, because accidents can and therefore will happen. I think that's what you're saying. Snob.
Can you hear me now? Is it?
Yeah, now I can hear you.
Well, I'm just saying. Well, the lady he shot, her husband. There's claims on the internet that are for the Clintons. So add that to your conspiracy theories. But I think the real question is,
I wasn't going to go there.
You know. Yeah, I mean, but the real question is, you know, they criticize and they ridicule us, and I see a lot of gun tubers out there saying, well, we say one thing, they say another, they exploit gun deaths, then when this stuff happens to them, we do. Well, we don't do dumb stuff like this. Honestly, we don't. We get blamed for the people that lose their mind and they shoot people.
Yeah. But
yet we're ridiculed for that. And these are people that are calling for gun control, and look at the way and the manner that they use firearms.
You know, he's got a point there. These people gratify the use of firearms in movies, whether they're playing the hero or the villain. And we gravitate towards that. There's sometimes we buy guns because they were in movies or TV shows. And people like to see that. We want to be entertained. There's all kinds of stuff that is in movies and TV shows that's not cool, but it's fake, you know? But the thing is, though, this really happened to a real person. And it goes right back to what you were saying, Budget, there about Alec Baldwin saying years ago, wonder what it's like to wrongfully kill somebody. Was he trying to be critical of somebody who got charged for wrongful death, and he was, you know, trying to use that to push gun control or some other crap like that? All talking to him, or
he was being critical of a law enforcement officer who wrongfully, quote unquote, shot somebody.
See,
you know the left's definition of wrongfully.
Yeah, we didn't like it. We didn't approve of it. Doesn't matter if it was justified or not. And see, the thing is, now he's walking a mile in that person's shoes. Be careful what you say, or be careful what you wish for, you may get it. Be careful what you say, it may happen to you later. And that's what I'm saying. This is an opportunity. This is an opportunity to take a look at what happened here and to not let this death be in vain. And I don't mean from the standpoint of what they're going to probably do with this. I mean from the standpoint of, once again, I'm going back to, we need to, or Hollywood should look at this and evaluate a standard operating procedure for all productions to do some safety checks all the time. Period. End of story. I mean, you know, they name laws after people who were victims. So, you know, name the standard safety check that's redundant. You're doing it over and over again. Oh, we're shooting a new scene. All right, check all the guns. We just checked them an hour ago. Now we were shooting a different scene. Then we took a break. I want them checked. Or something. I don't know. I mean, I'm trying to throw out ideas here because, like I said, whenever there's an atrocity, one of the best ways to deal with it and to move on is to try to find a way to keep it from happening. But you've got to use common sense. I was talking about, how they widen the stairwells after 9/11 for all new buildings to get out in a fire because part of the reason they couldn't get out was the stairwells were too narrow to get everybody out fast. Well, gun control isn't going to be the answer to fixing this. Gun control, it's like how many different crimes have you talked about where you have some politician propose something afterward and you say it right here on this show. This law would not have stopped the crime. So it has to be something that is actually going to work. It has to be something that is actually proven to work. And, just the 4 basic rules of firearm safety, that's a good start.
Well, here's my take on it. I think that this is the prop master's fault for not ensuring that every firearm, every time, just before they're going to be used every time, isn't absolutely safe. I think this is the production company's fault for hiring a 24-year-old girl as a prop master whose only creds and resume was that her dad is a prop master and firearms wrangler for the movies, and she has worked on one prior production, who even was hesitant about doing this because she didn't know that she was ready to do this. I have to say it's the production company's fault for continuously having these issues on set, because remember, there were 2 prior misfires, and that's what they call them. I'm going to call it what they are, negligent discharges, and that they didn't immediately sack the people responsible for the firearm safety and replace them with someone who was competent. I have to blame this on the production company for not paying attention to the concerns of the workers who walked out over safety concerns, including the firearm handling. I put this at the blame of Hollywood for not demanding that every single time, every single scene, everyone who handles the firearm prior to its use, including the last guy to have hold of it, i.e. the actor, not insisting that they all do redundant safety checks to make sure there is no live ammunition. Speaking of live ammunition, it's the fault of whoever allowed live ammunition on the set. And last but not least, it's Alec Baldwin's fault. Because Alec Baldwin had that gun in his hand, failed to check to see if it had any live rounds in it. Then he pointed it directly at a human being and squeezed the trigger, knowing that these types of accidents happen, knowing that he's supposed to be pointing it off into a safe direction to where it looks like he's pointing it at the camera or the other actor or whatnot, but he really isn't. He pointed a firearm at 2 human beings and squeezed the trigger. Think about that for a minute. He took a firearm and he pointed it. He trusted someone else to tell him that it wasn't loaded, and he didn't check it himself. I'm sure the vast majority of us, the minute we're handed a firearm, the very first thing we do is open the action and determine whether or not it is safe. The vast majority of us are going to do that because we have a clue and we don't rely on someone else. I think Squibb hit the nail on the head when he mentioned complacency. I think this is a case of something just being so common. Because remember, how many movies has Alec Baldwin been in where he's handled a firearm? a great many. This ain't the first time this has happened, where he's been handed a firearm and someone said, yeah, it's good, and he trusted that. This is why you don't trust that. Because now someone, and it's going to be the courts, are going to be going through this tangled mess and trying to make some kind of sense out of it. You know, I don't know about you. I don't ever want to be on the Alec Baldwin end of that, where someone has to go and untangle to see what happened because I negligently killed somebody. Trust and believe, I want it to be because I did it on purpose, because that son of a bitch, it was either them or me, not because someone was doing their job and I negligently shot him. Notice I use the word negligent, because it is negligent. It's not an accident. It's not an accident. It isn't like the gun was sitting on a shelf and there was an earthquake and it fell off the shelf and hit the hammer, and it was an older gun that didn't have a transfer bar safety and it went off, right? That would be an accident. Okay. This was negligence because somebody did not perform their due diligence. Somebody did not do what they were supposed to do, and someone died as a result. I don't ever want to even think about being in that situation. So every time someone hands me a firearm, even if I just saw them check it, I check it because they could have missed something. And I think that that's what needs to happen. I think you're right, Squib. There needs to be a policy set in place in Hollywood where every single time someone picks up a firearm, it must be checked and verified by that person, because ultimately, if you're the person with the gun in your hand, I think you're the one who's responsible. Now, that doesn't say that in this instance there isn't plenty of blame to go around, because there is. I think everybody involved in the production and Hollywood in general bear a certain amount of responsibility for this. But when it comes down to it, you're the last line. The buck stops here. That gun's in my hand. I'm responsible for it, and it behooves me to act accordingly.
Well, if they change the policy, I just hope it's not some BS feel-good measure. I've dealt with safety incidents at work where there was an accident at one of our factories somewhere else, and they made a corporate-wide safety policy to address the accident, but the process that they come up with had nothing to do with the accident, wouldn't stop the accident from happening. Waste of money or waste of time. It has nothing to do with it, but yet it looks good on paper. So I just hope the Hollywood guys, if they do anything about this to try to make the set a safer place for everybody, that it's just not some BS feel-good measure. I mean, that's what gun control comes down to. It's a BS feel-good measure, and it doesn't make any of us any safer.
Clint Torres says Hollywood does have a standard safety protocol put out by the Actors Guild. I'd be interested to see what that is. And if it is similar to what we're talking about, why wasn't it followed? Hell, why wasn't it followed to begin with? Because I'm sure if there is a safety protocol, it wasn't followed. I'd be interested to know what that is. If someone could throw a link out there in the chat to it, that would be great. Or send it to Mike at mkoutdoorjournal.com. I would very much like to see it. Rich White says, as the producer of the film, not just an actor in it, the buck stops with Baldwin as well. He's ultimately responsible for what happens on that set. Any way you cut it, it's on him. James Pellerin says to Giz that he still pointed it at someone regardless of anything else. Yes, the barrel shouldn't have been plugged. Yes, it should have been blank. Yes, it should have had it handed to him by the prop master. Fact is, he had it in his hand. He pointed it at someone when he shouldn't have, and he squeezed the trigger. Clint says the 4 basic rules are the foundation of Hollywood's protocol. Said Alec was effing around and someone else paid the price. Steve Gamiello, I hope I did not mispronounce that, says, I'm retired from the film industry in New York and have done many shooting scenes over the years. Rule 1, never have live ammo. Night Strike is in the house eating popcorn. Let's see. Steve Gamiello also says you always go over where the gun is to be pointed, and actors on the other end need to be out of the line of fire. Clint says Baldwin is a real POS to begin with. I have to agree. So it's hard to feel sorry for him. Yeah, I know what you're saying. I still can't. I still have to put myself in those shoes, though, to have the enormity of what you just did hit you. That has to be terrible. Even for someone I really despise. I don't know, maybe I'm really a softie at heart, but I feel some sort of empathy there. Night Strike says, I just find it ironic that someone that was vehemently anti-gun shot and killed someone and injured another during the filming of one of his movies. Yeah, I know. Gary says, this was not Hannah Gutierrez Reed's first job as a lead armorer. She just finished serving as head armorer on her first movie, The Old Way, starring Nicolas Cage. Yeah, I believe I said that she had only been in her prior resume was one film.
Yes, you did. You did.
But yeah, Alec Baldwin messed up. The entire production company messed up. Everybody on that set who continued working after many people walked off of it for safety reasons and safety concerns messed up. You know, again, I'm pretty sure that for something like this to happen, for someone to be so blasé about ignoring the rules of firearm safety at the bare minimum, this probably wasn't the first time it's happened. So anyone that's ever allowed that to happen on a set, they bear part of the responsibility. A minuscule part because they're not directly involved, but still a part. And I think, I would hope that if there is, and I'm going to trust that there is, a safety protocol in place, that in the future it's going to be followed and maybe enhanced just a little bit, because this kind of thing is absolutely not acceptable. That's what I think about it. Speaking of unacceptable, there's a piece coming out. It's from Breitbart about the city of Atlanta wanting to do something that is, per Georgia state law, not acceptable. Again, this is from Breitbart. Atlanta City Council wants fines for those who don't lock up their guns. Atlanta City Council wants fines for gun owners who do not lock their firearms in a box or otherwise store them when not in use or transport. But CBS 46 reports that the City Council cannot implement a gun storage resolution because the state of Georgia has a preemption law. Preemption laws prevent cities and municipalities from enacting gun controls that exceed the gun controls in place at the state level. The City Council pointed Monday to the number of guns stolen from vehicles annually in Atlanta and asked state lawmakers to make a change so cities and municipalities can issue fines for those who don't safely store their guns in their car. Atlanta City Councilman Michael Julian Bond commented, saying, "This isn't about trying to control or take away anyone's gun rights. We're just asking people who are exercising that right understand and will be on board with assuming the total weight of responsibility." The City Council's gun control push comes after some city leaders linked heightened violence to the coronavirus. On May 17, 2021, Fox 5 quoted Atlanta Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms, too easy, saying, Atlantans deserve and expect a safe community. As our administration continues to put considerable resources towards ending this COVID crime wave, the Anti-Violence Advisory Committee will begin work this week to make additional recommendations to help improve public safety throughout our city. So, Atlanta City Council wants to do what many city councils want to do and act like, they can just do whatever they want. I see this one in two ways. I think, and I very well might be wrong, that requiring people to do this is wrong. But I do think it's a damn good idea. That's why I have lock boxes in my vehicles, so that if I have to go someplace like the post office where I can't have my firearm on me, I lock it up, so it's less likely to be taken. Notice I didn't say impossible, but less likely. I take what reasonable precautions I may in order to do this. But fact is, people need to stay the hell out of your car, and punishing you for being the victim of a crime shouldn't happen. What do you guys think?
I don't think that it's something, even if it was allowed to go through, that it would make a difference. It's something that you're not going to be able to do until after the fact. If you report your gun stolen out of your car and they slap you with a fine, then you may not even want to report your gun stolen out of your car, and then later used in a crime and recovered, and they go, oh yeah, the guy said that he stole it out of your car, so we're going to slap you with this fine. I just, that's about the only way I can really think of that they're going to enforce this. Or if your car was impounded and they decided to go through it, but I thought they had to have a warrant to go through your car, unless there's probable cause.
If it gets impounded, they can inventory. It's not a search, it's an inventory. So they inventory it, so they have a loophole, and they find it, that's not, then they could slap you with a fine. But otherwise, there's really no way for this to really, even if we were all agreeing this is effective, how do you enforce it? How do you really enforce it? So this is another BS feel-good measure that doesn't do anything at the end of the day. You mean politicians do that? No. Clint Torres says, I love how POS city prosecutors that let violent felons walk on the regular like to blame the victims. Says he's got one of those in Seattle. Yes. Yes, you do. Back on the other topic about the Baldwin, I do want to put in the inputs of Mr. Gamiello out there, since he was part of this industry. Says, no one's to be within 20 feet of the barrel when firing blanks. Everything should be choreographed with a rubber gun. The big question is, why was Baldwin pointing the gun at anyone? Says, lastly, the assistant director, I heard, was in a rush to get the scene done. They typically rush things because time is money. FYI, Alec Baldwin is widely disliked by film crews in New York because he's an arrogant POS. I can believe that. I heard the tape of the stuff he was saying to his own daughter. Alec Baldwin is a piece of trash human being. But I do still feel kind of bad for him in this, because he is a human being, I guess. It's easy for us to be like, Alec Baldwin's a piece of crap, screw him. But I think that's what separates us from them, is the ability to have a little bit of empathy. I could be wrong, though. I freely admit.
To truly judge him as a piece of crap is how he handles this.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You could have the opinion he's a piece of crap and not be sympathetic, which is fine. Or you could have the opinion he's a piece of crap but be sympathetic, that's also fine. But let's see how he handles this. If he just lawyers up and blames everything but himself and that sort of thing, and I'm not saying he shouldn't be protected with a lawyer. If I had his sort of money, I'd have the best lawyer I could get. but it's just the whole, how does he start blaming the inanimate object, or does he blame gun owners, or does he blame the Second Amendment, or does he blame? Meanwhile, he's been profiting off of glorifying guns on stage, right?
That's always been one of my problems with him, is that he does that. I think what's going to happen in this instance, Squib, is he's going to put everything on that young lady, the prop master. He's going to point every finger he can at her. I think that you've hit the nail on the head with the true test of who he is going to be revealed by what he does. Clint says, has he even given an apology to the family? I don't know. I know that in the article that I had read, there was a picture of him hugging the husband of the woman he killed.
Okay, so if he called his lawyer that day, or his agent called his lawyer, or he talked to his agent, more than likely his agent or his lawyer said, don't say a damn word. Oh, yeah. You can't, and he might go, I want to apologize. No, if you do that, that could be used against you. Don't say, which sucks, because I know that in general people want something like that. They want him to immediately react and say that he's sorry and it wasn't intentional, stuff like that. But that actually doing that could be used against him. And it's unfortunate that we live in a world full of lawyers who have no heart and who play these silly games, these sick games, and mess with the jury and everything else. But he's got to be very careful if he wants to, what he did was stupid, but what he did wasn't, like you were saying, it wasn't malicious. Is it criminal? Is it criminal because of negligence? That's one thing, right? But is it criminal because he was being evil? No, I just don't think he was being evil. So if he hasn't made a statement or something, or he's made one statement and hasn't said anything since, it's probably because his agent or his lawyer advised him to.
Rich says it thinks he said something in the way of an apology on Twitter. I haven't read it, so I can't say. Rich, you have a wrench. If you got a link, throw it out there in the chat so people can find it, if you would, please. Where am I going next? Remember how I think a while ago it was I mentioned that Texas had put forth a measure to punish anti-gun banks by not allowing them to participate and make money off of their fundraising process through bonds. Well, it seems like Louisiana is about to do the same. This is from thehayride.com. Landry is returning the guns and banks to fight. The guns and banks fight to the bond commission. That's a clumsy headline. From October 18, 2021. Our readers likely remember that the Louisiana State Bond Commission took a very high-profile position back in 2018 against some woke Wall Street banks who had announced obnoxious virtue-signaling positions to discriminate against buyers and sellers of firearms. It was a rare highlight for principled conservative governance in what has otherwise been a blighted last several years since John Bel Edwards' inauguration as governor. The Bond Commission has since become a not terrible place for some limits to be placed against the worst of the left's cultural aggressions. The Bond Commission is in a position, given its control of some of Louisiana's purse strings, to limit access to taxpayer funds for various ne'er-do-wells, and as its members are mostly Republicans, it can do a lot when it chooses to. Attorney General Jeff Landry sits on the Bond Commission. Landry is a proponent of using it aggressively, and that's why Thursday he proposed another effort to defend gun rights against woke banks. It's a good bet that will become reality at the next Bond Commission meeting. Landry wrote a letter to Jamie Dimon, who is the CEO of J.P. Morgan Chase Bank, requesting a supplemental certification to the Louisiana State Bond Commission as it relates to whether the firm has policies that restrict or would otherwise infringe on the constitutionally protected rights of the citizens of the state to lawfully keep and bear arms, and more. Dimon testified back in May to the House Financial Services Committee that we do not finance the manufacture of military-style weapons for civilian use. That was a statement calibrated to placate gun-grabbing Democrat Congress critters who in this current environment must be placated or else there will be hell to pay. But Landry's take, which is a correct one, is that Diamond and the other financiers are drifting into wokeism because it seems easier and the solution is fairly easy. Simply show them that they're wrong. If Chase wants to make woke policies like discriminating against gun manufacturers by denying them loans and canceling credit cards and bank accounts, then retaliation against Chase is warranted. And that, in Louisiana, means denying Chase eligibility to participate in the financing of state debt through the Bond Commission, something Landry and its other members have already done to other anti-Second Amendment banks. Then it gives an excerpt from the letter and basically, hey, do you guys think this is a good thing? I know I think it's a good thing. What do you guys think here on the panel?
Yeah, it's a good thing. I mean, anytime somebody sticks up for gun rights is a good thing. I mean, we've seen this happen with people having ordered some kind of gun-related item and having their account, shut down, or they wouldn't accept the payments, and anything to help fight the big banks, man. They're part of the biggest problem in the country is the banking system and the people that run it. So it is what it is.
Yeah, I think it's time that someone stands up to these guys and lets them know that this stuff isn't acceptable. And, the only thing a bank's going to pay attention to is the bottom line. Because that's that. The bottom line is the bottom line with a bank. They're in business to do business. And if something hurts business, well, it hurts them. That might get their attention. Night Strike 1 says, I wish more states were doing that. Yep, me too. I wish they were. Hopefully more will join on that bandwagon. Speaking of hopefully more of something will happen, hopefully we'll get more of this. This is from The Truth About Guns. Pennsylvania Supreme Court rules Harrisburg citizens can challenge gun control laws without violating them. From the Associated Press. People can sue to challenge a city's gun restrictions even if they have not been charged with violating them, Pennsylvania's highest court ruled Wednesday. A divided state Supreme Court said that Firearms Owners Against Crime and other plaintiffs have legal standing to take on the Harrisburg city gun ordinances. At issue are local laws with criminal penalties for discharging a gun outside a gun range, possessing guns in parks, failing to report lost or stolen guns within 2 days, or unaccompanied children having firearms outside their homes. The majority opinion in the 4-3 decision said the plaintiffs do not have to wait until they are charged with violating ordinances before challenging them on constitutional grounds. The decision comes after years of work by Republicans in the state legislature to prevent local governments from enacting gun laws that are more restrictive than what the state law imposes, and to widen who may sue to overturn such ordinances. Kim Stolfer, who heads up the firearm owners group, said Wednesday he expects the case to return to a lower court where the underlying merits of their case will be decided. No citizen should face prosecution for exercising a constitutional right, Stolfer said, and that's essentially what Harrisburg wanted us to go through to be qualified in this action to take on their illegal ordinances. Harrisburg Mayor Eric Poppenfuse, a defendant along with the city and its police chief, said the Lost and Stolen Ordinance has helped city police take on the illegal gun trade, an enforcement effort that removed 153 illegally possessed guns from Harrisburg's streets this year. He called the decision a dangerous precedent. We absolutely plan to defend our ordinances with all of our might, Poppenfuse said Wednesday. I think the ruling is good news for lawyers and the gun lobby, but terrible news for both the residents of Harrisburg and the residents of the Commonwealth. So, yeah, you think it's a good thing that people have to be charged with a crime before they can challenge your illegal and unlawful and unconstitutional crap? Okay, tyrant. The court decision centered on the legal issue of standing, or who is allowed to sue and under which circumstances, under the Pennsylvania Declaratory Judgments Act. People generally need to show that they have been harmed by a law in order to challenge it, but Justice Sally Mundy outlined several cases in which that standard has been modified to permit lawsuits that put people in the position of complying with a law or giving up their rights. Justice David Wecht, voting with the majority, wrote in a concurrence that standing has evolved to permit pre-enforcement review of governmental enactments. We do not require plaintiffs to violate laws or regulations and subject themselves to sanctions for engaging in protected conduct as the price of admission to the courthouse, Wecht wrote. In a dissent, Justice Max Baer said the plaintiffs have not claimed they engaged in a conduct prohibited by law or that they intended to. Well, hell no, they shouldn't have to, because the Fifth Amendment guarantees that you don't have to incriminate yourself by saying, yeah, I did something illegal, just so you can sue. That's a bunch of crap. Accordingly, I would hold that they have failed to establish a substantial, direct, and immediate interest sufficient to afford them standing, Baer wrote. And Justice Christine Donahue said, mere ownership of a firearm does not establish an immediate or direct interest in the ordinances. Madam, I would beg to differ. The city ordinances in question were passed in 1821, 1905, 1951, and in the case of the lost and stolen gun reporting requirement, 2009. Adam Garber with Ceasefire PA, a group that seeks to reduce gun violence, i.e. a gun control group, said the decision will not make the state safer. This decision could scare local officials who are searching for innovative and new solutions to a public health crisis, in other words, people who want to enact more gun control, that is claiming the lives of their constituents on a daily basis, Garber said in an email. Firearm Owners Against Crime is a gun rights group that is regularly involved in lobbying and rallying on related issues in the state capitol. It claims about 1,600 members. The other two plaintiffs, members of the group, are a Harrisburg resident and a man who works in the city, both concerned they could be prosecuted for violating the ordinances. Yeah, I think it's the craziest thing in the world. You have to break the law and admit to breaking the law in order to try to sue to get the law changed. That is a complete and utter pile of horse shit. What do you guys think? Did the court make the right decision here, or are the local folks in the right?
They did the right thing. They did the right thing. You shouldn't have to break the law in order to change the law. I mean, I do think that if you break the law intentionally or unintentionally, it does kind of open up the possibility to have a law changed, but you shouldn't have to do it. You know, this is America. You know, we're supposed to be able to affect change without a lot of, well, I was going to say red tape and whatnot, but no, it does take a lot of red tape, unfortunately. And this is just one less piece of red tape in the way.
There's some pesky thing I remember somewhere. I read it in some obscure scribbling rag somewhere about petition for redress of grievances, maybe? Pretty sure we have that right. Unfortunately, tyrants going to tyrant, right? And they don't want you to have any ability to resist the tyranny that they tyrant up. Guess that's why they call them tyrants, right? Next door here in Ohio, we have some stuff coming up. This is a piece from the Columbus Dispatch. It says, Ohio Republicans pass bill to prevent gun store closures during emergencies, sale and transport of weapons during a riot. Republicans in the Ohio Senate passed a bill 23-7 Wednesday that says local governments can't close gun stores or confiscate firearms during riots or other states of emergency. During the COVID pandemic, it became evident that local, state, and federal governments have sweeping powers when it came to emergencies, Senator Tim Schafer, Republican, Lancaster, said. Ohio Governor Mike DeWine carved out an exemption for gun stores in his stay-at-home orders, but other states did not. And I was actually quite surprised that DeWine did that, because he's not exactly a friend of the Second Amendment. Senate Bill 185 would also ban local governments from invalidating concealed carry licenses or closing down shooting ranges. Current law allows local governments to prohibit the sale or transportation of firearms or other dangerous weapons, such as crossbows and knives, when suppressing a riot or when there is a clear and present danger of a riot. I would think that when there's a clear and present danger of a riot, that might be when you might want to have a gun with you, or might want to be able to buy a gun. But maybe I'm crazy. Senate Bill 185 would eliminate that provision for everything except dynamite and other explosives. I'm not even sure that's reasonable. Shall not be infringed. And that's a problem for Democrats like Senator Cecil Thomas, a Democrat from Cincinnati's Avondale neighborhood. You're denying local governments the ability to protect their communities as they deem appropriate, Thomas said. Groups like Ohio Municipal League opposed the bill in committee, saying it would violate the home rule authority of local governments. Well, guess what? We got preemption. So, yeah. The Ohio Constitution grants home rule authority to municipalities in recognition that a government closest to the people governs best. Ohio Municipal League Director Ken Scarrett said earlier this month, each city and village should be equipped to serve and protect the interests of their communities. Yes, except when those interests, quote unquote, infringe upon the rights of all citizens of Ohio. Like, when Cleveland tries to make anti-gun ordinances that people who have to go to Cleveland for medical treatment at University Hospital or the Cleveland Clinic, they have to endure that. So the state legislature, in a surprising bit of wisdom for government, passed preemption laws in Ohio that have some pretty good stinking teeth that provide for the plaintiffs in a case to be able to recover their expenses, including attorney's fees, if and when they're sued because their actions are dumb, which is usually the case. So I think that's good. I'm hoping that this makes its way through the Ohio House and becomes law in the state. I will definitely keep my fellow Buckeyes informed as soon as I find more out. Guy that comments says, anti-gun people are a paradox. They're people who are okay with using lethal force to impose their will, which is why they shouldn't own guns. But that's why we own guns, so others won't impose their will on us. Well, yeah, and that's why they don't want us to be able to do so. Because they don't want us to be able to resist the imposition of their will. Okay, what is up next? Let's see. Well, I think that's it. Normally, folks, this is where we would go into the moron of the week. But this week I decided there was only one person who could get it. And as I've said, I'm trying to show some empathy here. I'm trying to put myself in someone else's shoes. And trying not to use this tragedy to score points. So I decided not to do Moron of the Week because there was only one person I could have put in it. And that would have been Mr. Baldwin. But as I said, I'm trying to be better than that this week. I'm sure I'll be my usual asshole self next week. But I don't know. It doesn't sit right with me today to heap more upon that individual. So I apologize for those of you who enjoy that. But I do have another story that you may find interesting. We'll go from, instead of the ridiculous, we will go to the sublime, and we will award the balls of steel to the individual in our next topic. And that's going to be this devil dog in Arizona. This is from Breitbart. Marine takes gun from alleged robber in Arizona convenience store. Surveillance video shows a retired U.S. Marine taking a gun away from an alleged robber who entered a Yuma, Arizona convenience store early Wednesday morning. CBS 13 reports that the incident occurred in a Chevron gas station when 3 suspects entered the store, one of whom was allegedly armed. There ain't no alleged to it. This dude was armed. Yeah, it's clear in the video when you see it. He got a gun. He's trying to rob the place. There's no alleged to it. So, yes. The retired USMC, who was near the counter when the suspects walked in, immediately turned on the armed suspect and took away his gun. Fox 8 notes that the former Marine was able to detain the suspect after disarming him, but the other two suspects fled the scene. Upon being interviewed by sheriff's deputies, the former Marine said, "The Marine Corps taught me not to mess around." Mess is in brackets there, so I would suspect that's not the word that that Leatherneck said. Let's go ahead and watch this.
And new this morning, a robbery suspect is behind bars thanks to a brave U.S. Marine. Take a look at this video.
An armed man walks into the gas station, points a gun at the cashier, but is quickly disarmed by the Marine. This happened at a Chevron in Yuma yesterday. He was able to hold down the robber until police arrived. The other two suspects got away. Thankfully, no one was hurt. When deputies asked the Marine how he was able to take control of the situation, he said, "The Marine Corps taught me not to mess around."
Wow, some quick acting there in what would have been a very dangerous situation.
So for those who couldn't see that, these two dudes walk into the gas station. One of them is holding a gun out, pointing it at the clerk. The Marine turns around, sees what's going on, casually drops his keys fob in his left hand, uses that to push the gun up and out of the way, and then with his right, well, he just unloads and clocks this kid. It was a 16-year-old kid. He clocked him and knocked him down, took the other dude down with him. Then the other guy was able to scramble out with his pants halfway down his ass and get away. But he kept the dude that had the gun there. So hats off to you, Devil Dog, and you definitely had the balls of steel this week. But there are some other folks who have some huevos of their own. So we're going to go right into what is Roll Call 219's favorite segment, self-defense shout-outs.
Yay!
For those of you who've never been here before or who have never stuck around to the end, self-defense shout-outs are not where I'm reveling in the proposition that the bad guy won the room temperature challenge by taking a dirt nap. It's where I am instead reveling in the proposition that the good guy had the means, method, and opportunity to keep the bad guy from making him do the same. First up is this piece from KCRA.com. Man shot, killed by Sacramento homeowner, may have been burglar, police say. May have been? Sacramento, California. A Sacramento homeowner shot and killed a man who may have been trying to burglarize a home Sunday evening, police said. Officers went to the 5500 block of 27th Avenue around 9 p.m. after a shooting was reported. There they found a man who had been shot at least once lying in the street, according to a Monday release from the Sacramento Police Department. The man was taken to an area hospital where he was pronounced dead. The Sacramento County Coroner's Office will release his identity after his next of kin have been notified. Based on preliminary information, the deceased male may have been involved in an attempted burglary of a residence in the area and was then shot by the homeowner, police said in the release. Detectives will be canvassing the neighborhood for additional information and evidence, police said. So good for you, Mr. Homeowner. Good for you. Next up, this is from KVAL.com. Police. No criminal charges filed in fatal shooting at Eugene apartment complex. From October 21st. Eugene, Oregon. The Eugene Police Department has released new information on Monday's fatal shooting at a South Eugene apartment complex. According to police, sometime after 10 p.m. on October 17th, Skylar Weisberg, 28, left his home in Tillamook County and traveled to Eugene. While en route, Weisberg was pulled over in the Polk County after committing a minor traffic violation and told the deputy he was traveling to Eugene to look for his wife. Around 3:40 a.m., Weisberg arrived at the apartment he had previously shared with his wife in the complex at 5477 Donald Street. The current residents of the apartment, 21-year-old Daniel Ernst and his 20-year-old girlfriend, were sleeping inside. Weisberg pounded on the door, waking them up. Ernst made contact with Weisberg through a window adjacent to the front door of the apartment. Weisberg began yelling and pounding on the windows, demanding to see his wife loud enough to prompt multiple 911 calls from the residents at the complex. Ernst told Weisberg his wife was not at the location and asked him to leave, EPD said. Weisberg continued to bang on the window to the apartment, eventually breaking the window and making entry into the apartment. The man was armed with a shotgun and continued to tell Weisberg to leave. According to police, Weisberg advanced toward Ernst, making comments about death. Ernst shot at Weisberg twice, causing Weisberg to temporarily stop advancing toward Ernst, but then began advancing again. Ernst shot at Weisberg a third time, and Weisberg fell to the ground just feet away from the hallway leading to Ernst's bedroom. Ernst and his girlfriend followed instructions from the 911 call taker and arriving police officers and were removed from the apartment. Responding officers provided medical care to Weisberg until the arrival of Eugene Springfield fire personnel, who pronounced Weisberg deceased. Weisberg's family, including his estranged wife, have been contacted. I bet she's relieved, EPD said. Weisberg had a history of mental illness and at least one prior psychotic episode. After consulting with the Lane County District Attorney's Office, there will be no criminal charges filed in the case, nor should there be. Next up, from WSFA.com, Sheriff, armed 95-year-old foils home invasion in Covington County. Covington County, Alabama. The Covington County Sheriff's Office is crediting a senior citizen with forcing an alleged burglar into retreat, which ended with his capture. Sheriff Blake Turman said Timothy Ray Jordan, 40, broke into a home on Fisherman's Road near the Dozier community Friday evening. The 95-year-old homeowner was reportedly napping in his living room, but the back door's shattering glass woke him up. The sheriff said the homeowner armed himself and caught Jordan ransacking the kitchen. He said Jordan also hurled a chair through the dining room window at some point. According to the sheriff, the armed senior citizen did not run away. Instead, he ordered Jordan to leave. The suspect did, and the homeowner called 911, Turman said. Turman said deputies saw Jordan behind a home on Hub Road. They pursued the suspect, who ran inside the home. Further investigation revealed that Jordan had also burglarized that Hub Road home, according to the sheriff. He was taken into custody at the Hub Road residence. Investigators say Jordan initially started his burglary spree at an adjacent home's gazebo before going to the Fisherman's Road address. Jordan was charged with second-degree and third-degree burglary, as well as second-degree and third-degree criminal mischief. He's currently being held in the Covington County Jail without bond for probation violation. The investigation is still ongoing. The victim protected himself and his property from a career criminal. The victim was at a disadvantage physically, but his weapon enabled him to protect himself. The investigation revealed that Jordan fled the residence because the homeowner had armed himself. Thank God this had been a good ending, and the victim should be commended on his courage and quick thinking, Turman said. There's a law enforcement person who has it right. And last, but most certainly not least, is this piece from Bearing Arms and this Pennsylvanian sheepdog. Armed citizen stops mall shooting, by Cam Edwards, October 19, 2021. 4 people were injured after a fight at a Pennsylvania shopping mall escalated into a shooting this past weekend, but it could have been much worse were it not for the quick action taken by an armed citizen. According to witnesses inside Lancaster's Park City Center on Sunday afternoon, the incident started with a couple of guys jawing at each other before the confrontation turned physical. Hannah Ali, 57, of Lititz, said the shootings took place after the fight in front of Tabarak Al-Hana, an international food store she owns, along with her sister. Ali said an argument broke out between a group of 4 people just outside the store around 2 p.m. or 2:30 p.m., centered around 2 adult men. A scuffle took place, during which one of the men brandished a gun and began making threats to the others. The gun was knocked from the man's hand, and the second man then mounted him and shot him, Ali said. A second man, also part of the group, was also shot, though Ali was unsure how. Everything went so fast, she said. We were scared, so we were hiding behind my register. Other shoppers scrambled for the exits once they heard the sound of gunshots. Kevin Young, 68, of Lancaster, was shopping upstairs when he heard shots ring out through the mall. There were too many to count, he said. It was like a lot of firecrackers going off. Young saw a mass of people running through the mall, headed towards the exits. Some people were lying on the ground. Young was ushered into a back room where he hid for about half an hour, he said. What Young and most shoppers didn't realize was that the threat had already been stopped by a legal gun owner and a concealed carry holder. The unidentified bystander, who legally possessed the firearm, had heard gunshots related to a fight between two males that knew each other, police said. The bystander remained on scene until security and police arrived. Police said the initial shooting stemmed from an altercation between two males who knew each other, and at least one of them, a 16-year-old boy, had a gun. They and other people then struggled for the gun, and the 16-year-old fired at least 2 shots, striking at least one of the people involved. The bystander, who had been taken in a store nearby, heard the shots, came over, and then engaged the subjects fighting over the gun and fired shots, striking one of the suspects. So far, the 16-year-old is the only one facing charges in the shooting, and thankfully it looks like no one suffered life-threatening injuries. While police say they continue to investigate the actions of the armed citizen, from what's been reported, it sounds like he was acting in self-defense of others when he drew his firearm and shot the armed suspect. Rather than highlight the fact that an armed citizen was able to stop this shooting before more people were injured, though, the editors of the local paper chose instead to rail about guns in their op-ed about the shooting. We don't yet have enough information about what transpired Sunday at Park City Center to assess the actions of the bystander who intervened, but consider the following statistics. Guns rarely make us safer. There are more guns in circulation in the United States than there are people. More than 393 million guns, approximately 120.5 guns for every 100 people, as the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia website notes. So perhaps it shouldn't surprise us when a shooting occurs at a movie theater or a grocery store or a college campus or in a neighborhood or home. Guns are everywhere. And we're supposed to live with this fact as if it's normal. We're supposed to be okay with the fact that only some mass shootings make the national news in the United States and then only occupy our attention for a few days. If the problem was simply the presence of firearms, our violent crime rate would be far worse than what it is right now. The fact is that even with the growing number of privately owned firearms over the past 2 decades, violent crime and homicides have steadily declined across the country, at least until last year's crime spike. And contrary to the paper's claims, it's not too early to assess the actions of the armed bystander. He clearly responded to a dangerous situation and stopped the threat. He might have violated the mall's no guns allowed policy, but so did the 16-year-old who was allegedly in illegal possession of a firearm. If anything, this shooting shows us once again that gun-free zones are completely ineffective at preventing violent crime. The incident also serves as a reminder that armed citizens can and do save lives, even if the local Lancaster paper would prefer to downplay the actions of the mall patron who stopped the shooting at the Park City Center. The fact is that things likely would have been a lot worse if the armed citizen hadn't been there and responded to the gunfire with shots of his own. But the anti-gun crowd can't and won't acknowledge that simple reality. So there we go, folks. Despite what the mainstream media and newspapers across the country would have you think, the good guy often stops the bad guy. The only difference is the person holding the tool. So on that note, I'd like to thank everybody for being here this week. I know it was a Sunday instead of a Friday. I'm still glad you're here. You could have been doing anything at all on this Sunday evening, but here you are having this conversation with us, and I greatly appreciate it. I will catch you guys on Friday, but before I go, I would like to give my esteemed panel an opportunity to give their thoughts. Squibload, is there anything you would like to leave us with? Anything that you would like to say, sir?
Yeah, where's the mute button? No, thanks for the invite. Another good show. Everybody have a good week this coming week.
Roll call, is there anything you'd like to leave us with? Any plugs you'd like to make?
Well, man, thanks for having me. It's great, great chat. Sorry I was a little bit late, but work ran late, so I had no choice but to stay at that hole.
Gotta pay the bills,
so yeah,
brother.
Gotta do something to buy little stuff on little shelves with my little hands so tiny. But go check me out on YouTube.
And I'd like to thank everybody out there again for being part of the conversation tonight. Remember, particularly if you're in the state of Ohio, about this law making its way, SB 185, making its way through our legislature, to contact your Congress critters' elected representatives and let them know what you think. Send them a snail mail, email, telephone, telegraph, carrier pigeon, bicycle messenger, smoke signals, semaphore, heliograph, anything that you have to do to let them know what you think. And never, ever, ever give up the fight. See you guys next week.